Hello, welcome to Revenant Reads. I'm Vin, and this is another installment of Book Trek 2023, where we're going to be looking at The Vulcan Academy Murders by Jean Lorrah. So, Book Trek is a 3 month long celebration of Star Trek fiction. We are calling this the Summer of Trek. I am doing this along with some great co hosts who have been making some great videos as well. I'm finally starting to catch up. Star Trek fiction has always been associated with summer for me. When I'm a teacher, so when summer vacation begins, I immediately go to my pile of Star Trek books that I haven't read yet, and I crack them open and I begin reading. So I started Book Trek with looking at a graphic novel that was given to me by one of my co-hosts, Brandy, and now I'm going on to discussing my first actual novel that I've read. So the Vulcan Academy Murders. This was originally published in 1984. Let me just double check here real quick. 1984. And I remember seeing this on lists of kind of favorite Star Trek books. And after reading it, I guess I can see why. I really enjoyed this to a degree that I wasn't expecting. Now, it's certainly, it is not without its flaws. It is essentially a murder mystery, and I will say that the biggest letdown is the actual murder mystery, especially when you find out the motivation of the murders, why they're happening. I kind of wish that there was something else that could have been, the motivating factor there. It's very unsatisfying in that sense. But what makes this great is the character work. I think the character work is fabulous in this, as well as the look at Vulcan culture. So what we have is after a recent, I don't remember if it was a battle or exactly what was happening, but a crew member on the Enterprise, not one of the central ones. This is a crew member invented for the book. There's an explosion that goes off, and he's critically injured. He's going to die unless he can get repaired to his nerves. Now, it just so happens on Vulcan, where Kirk, Spock, and McCoy were pretty much already headed, there is a brand new treatment being pioneered at the Vulcan Science Academy. It is by a dual team of a Vulcan named Sorrel and a human named Kerrigan, a guy who grew up in Ireland, but who has pretty much made his home in Vulcan for the past 20 years or so. And together they have come up with a process to basically regenerate nerves. Kerrigan has already done the procedure himself, and it involves going into stasis for a certain period of time. I think it might have even been up to a couple of weeks. And while his nerves are basically regrown, and not only does he come out with intact nerves, he's also kind of younger. He's been de-aged back to his mid-30s. So it's a little bit of a de-aging process. He had nerve damage, I think, because of his extended time on Vulcan. The same thing is happening to Spock's mother, Amanda. So she also is undergoing the stasis treatment, the regeneration stasis. So she is in stasis, and her husband, Sarek, Spock's father, is kind of eagerly awaiting her to get out. There is also another Vulcan woman who is undergoing the process, and that is Sorrel's wife. Again, one of the scientists who created this process. And if they can get the crew member from the Enterprise there, he also has a chance at surviving. So they all go to Vulcan and they start this. However, there starts being malfunctions in the stasis machines. And first it kills Sorrel, the Vulcan's Vulcan wife. And it's really effectively written. Of course, we end up finding out that, this maybe was not a malfunction, that there's something else going on, that there's intentional murder occurring at the Science Academy that has to do with these stasis machines. So they're trying to figure out exactly what's happening. Now, in the Vulcan culture, you have Vulcans get bonded with their mates. So it's basically a strong psychic connection that they end up having. And what this novel shows is that when one of them dies, it actually puts at risk the life of the person they're bonded with. So if that is severed, that connection, it could actually put them basically into a point which they will also be killed, unless they can get somebody to basically mind meld with them and bring them out of it. So that's a big part of this whole thing, is bonding and psychic connections. And this ends up being a pretty good follow-up, especially to 2 episodes in the original series. You've got Amok Time, where Captain Kirk and Spock have a fight to the death because Spock is going through Ponfar and he's like basically feral and has the urge to mate. It's a fun episode. And another fun episode is Journey to Babel, where we see Spock's mother and father, and we find out the very cold, disconnected relationship that the father Sarek has with Spock. So a lot of it has to do with a reconciliation between those 2 characters, especially them both worrying about Amanda and whether or not she is going to fall victim to whoever is, basically sabotaging these stasis machines. Now, what I really liked about this, again, it wasn't so much the mystery. The downside is that you will be able to finger who the culprit is pretty quickly. And you're not going to be surprised at the end at all who it actually is. You have already figured it out. So that's the downside to this. But like I said, along the way, the character work is just excellent. And there are some terrifically well-written, at least in my opinion, passages that have to do with these people's connections with each other, with Vulcan society. There's some really cool concepts. It's known that Vulcan doesn't have a moon, although I guess J.J. Abrams didn't know that. But in this one, they don't have a moon, but they do have like a sister planet. And I don't know if this is something that comes up in the other books or if this is only in this. So people can let me know if they know. But it's called a comet or something, I think. But it's a sister planet that is basically on an elliptical orbit. And every certain amount of years or so, it gets close to Vulcan. And it comes up on the horizon across the sky like a giant moon. And then, it'll disappear for a number of years and then it'll come back again. So it's this big kind of, quasi-religious event as well on Vulcan. That was really cool. Beautiful, beautiful imagery that we get from that. But also, I was really moved at certain points by the passages having to do with mind melds and connections. There is a point where Kerrigan, and this is kind of just a mild spoiler. This is stuff all in the very first half of the book. Kerrigan's partner Sorrel, when his wife is killed in the stasis machine, he basically starts also dying. So Kerrigan, he had mind melded with him at one point. He doesn't really have the ability himself, but he can kind of tap into things. And he is there to try and bring Sorrel out of this near death. And it's just also as Sorrel's kids arrive, his grown children, and they also start basically mind melding. And Kerrigan is, for the first time ever, he's a fairly lonely guy. He lives alone. He has no partner. He doesn't really have family. For the first time, she writes beautifully about how much he feels a part of a family and how kind of overwhelmingly amazing that is. And then he's pulled out of it. And there's this kind of cold, lonely desperation, this depression that sinks over him. And it's just beautifully written with all of that. The action when it happens is also quite well done. There's some really good action, and she definitely moves the plot along, and I was enjoying it, even though the mystery, like I said, was not much of a mystery. I was still enjoying the ride a lot. So I don't want to give any more away about this, but other than to say that I would actually highly recommend this, as long as you don't go in there thinking that you're going to get an amazing mystery. I will say that you will get amazing character work, and that stuff, for me, goes a long way, because that's really what I want out of these. The plot doesn't have to be amazing. I'm there for the characters again. And as long as you get the characters right and you do them justice, and you give me something that I can, kind of re-experience these characters in a way that's respectful and compelling, that's enough for me. I really, that's really why I go for these kind of pastiche Trek fiction. So, yes, The Vulcan Academy Orders by Jean Lorrah. If you've read this, I'd love to hear your thoughts. I hope you're joining Book Trek. And as always, thank you, BookTube.